Hey, we're in week 3 of our Names of God series. The Names of God series that is transitioning us from a position of knowing of God to knowing God. And in week 1, we covered the name of Elohim, the name given to God to reflect the one true God. In week 2, we studied Jehovah, the name of God that reflects a self-revealing God, the one that wants to have a relationship with you and I. Adonai was the third name we studied, and that is the Lord our Master. The one that when we feel like we have to have all the answers and all the solutions and control over our lives, it helps put us in perspective of knowing that He is our Lord and Master. He is the one truly in control of all things. It's not a master in the term of derogatory, but a positional name to let us always know that He is above all things. Today we're going to study Jehovah Nissi and Jehovah Saba. So let me go into Jehovah Nissi first, and to do so I want to take you to Exodus chapter 17. Exodus chapter 17, we find the nation of Israel moving out through the wilderness still. They've come through the Red Sea, and they've just been in a perpetual murmuring state, it seems. They're frustrated, they're hungry, they're thirsty, they're tired. And so they were a very weak nation physically. Spiritually, they were struggling as well. They had lost their way as far as truly believing in God. Obviously, if you're murmuring and complaining and wanting to go back to captivity, do you really realize the God who has brought you through and delivered you? And what should have been a few days trip turned into a 40-year trip. So we take Jehovah Nissi, and we find that name written in chapter 17, verse 15, on the conclusion of a part where the Israelites had been attacked by Amalek and his tribe, the Amalekites. So the Amalekites were one that should have overcome a very weakened nation. They stood against everything that the Israelites should have stood for. The nation, God's chosen people. And to fight this battle, we see Moses going to the hilltop, and he raises his staff. And as long as the staff is risen, then the nation of Israel will be victorious. If the staff is lowered, the tribe of Amalek will be victorious. So it's imperative that Moses' staff stays raised. While Moses is on the hilltop, Joshua is down below with the rest of the tribe engaged in physical battle. And as the story goes through, the staff remains raised. We'll talk about how that happened shortly. But the point of the story is they're victorious. Joshua and the tribe, they physically kill off the nation of, or the tribe of Amalek. And we see in verse 15, Moses built an altar to celebrate and commemorate that occasion, and he called it the name of Jehovah Nissi. That's in the King James translation. If we go to another translation, like the New American Standard Bible, we'll see it doesn't say Jehovah Nissi. It says that name is been translated to the Lord is my banner. So there's the name of Jehovah Nissi and what it reflects. What does that mean to us? Well, first we need to understand what a banner is, because we don't typically walk around flying banners all over the place, but they surround us everywhere. I want to paint you a picture first off, and then we'll dive into some uses of banners. One of the first things I think about with a banner is, if you're like me, you watch the Olympics every few years. And one of the beautiful spectacles that you see in every Olympics is when all the athletes, they congregate amongst their individual countries and they do the march in. And at the beginning of that is someone is a flag bearer. They have the flag raised high, and sometimes they even have an actual banner that tells you what country that is, because we may not identify the flag. But all of the athletes that represent the United States of America march in behind the American flag. And they're all usually wearing some jacket that has USA or United States of America on it, labeled. So that banner, that flag in that situation acts as a banner, one that identifies every person in that group as being an American. So in that respect, God is our banner. We identify as followers of God. Another instance where you see that is when we go into battle. We go into battle, again, the flag is raised to identify that particular country. Or as a military member of the American military, I'll wear an American flag on my sleeve. If I'm in a particular unit or service component, I may have a banner or a flag that identifies that particular unit as well. So we can have different banners that further identify who we are or what our purpose is. I remember we have units in the military such as Rangers, Army Rangers, or Navy SEALs. They'll wear a special thing on their sleeve that'll identify them oftentimes. Or you may have a pin that you wear right here that identifies you as surface warfare or air warfare trained. All of those things are a type of banner, identifying marker, if you will. And so that's what we're alluding to as one of the uses of a banner. Another thing we may use a banner for is to commemorate something or identify a certain event coming. All of those things can be used for a banner. And in this purpose, Moses is building an altar and says, this is a commemorating occasion. This is a marker that we're building to identify the victory that God has just provided for us. And as such, we want to have opportunities in our lives to be able to recognize God for what He's done in our lives. Each moment we recognize God for the victories in our lives, we're lifting a banner in praise and celebration to God, thanking Him for those victories. So that's what we're talking about here. I wanted to branch off on that army thought because that goes into the second name, Jehovah Sabbath. Jehovah Sabbath equates to the Lord of hosts. If you're like me, you've heard that term many times in your life, but I had to dig deeper because on the surface, when I hear host, I'm thinking host of a party, or hey, you come to my house, I'm going to host you. But in this reflect, that name actually, the word host, it translates into an army component. So the Lord, when they say Jehovah Sabbath, He is the Lord of the armies. So when we take that battle theme, not only is He the banner that we're waving high to reflect and identify ourselves as an army of God, but He's also that one leading us into battle. And He's the one that's already got the victory plan. He knows what's going to happen. He knows how to get us through it. Just as He told Moses, go to the hilltop, Joshua fight in the valley, in the actual physical component, and if you follow me and you raise that staff high, there's the instruction, there's the battle plan, you will be victorious. So there we see that image. And we'll talk about David in a minute, David and Goliath, as we go through our notes here that I want you to take today. We're going to see two stories where we see Jehovah Nissi and Jehovah Sabbath. The first point I want you to take down today, though, is we must face our fears and fight courageously with dependence on God's help. So I want you to think about when Moses went to the mountaintop, he knew that there was a spiritual element in here that he needed to let God be in control of this. He needed to call on spiritual divine intervention in this battle. They could not do it alone. And that's reflected in chapter 17, verse 9 of Exodus. Moses said unto Joshua, choose us out men, so choose some guys, go out, fight with Amalek. You do that, and I'm going to go up here on the hill, and I'm going to raise the staff, and we're going to find, as long as we do this, I'm basically going to go call out to God, and I'm going to make sure that we have that spiritual connection, and we're going to be victorious. So in our battles, we're in the physical realm, and it's very easy just to see that. That's all we see. And sometimes we lose sight that there is a spiritual component that needs to be tapped into for us to truly find victory. Number 2, face your fears in biblical community. In our battles, in our opposition, we're going to sometimes feel like we're alone, maybe. The whole point that I've really been trying to impress upon us through these messages over the last couple of months, it seems, has all been about building this community of believers that shares a common thread of having to deal with this thing called the registry. But it doesn't just stop at the registry. There's people that aren't even on the registry that have come and found comfort in this community. Why? Because we're a body of believers first. And we stand in the gap with each other. We lift each other up when we have issues. If someone has a family matter that needs to be prayed over, we pray for them. If someone has a need that needs to be met, we do our best to meet them. If we know people that are incarcerated that need to have resources brought to their attention so that they can have a smoother transition than maybe we had, then we reach out and make that available. We do everything we can to be the hands and feet of Christ. Why? Because in a way that's the form of raising our banner, raising it high. We also do it because Scripture tells us if we share our load with each other, then we're not carrying that weight on our full shoulders. If we got 10 people beside me here and we were trying to lift a heavy weight up, if I'm doing it myself, it's going to say 100 pounds. I'm going to feel the full 100 pounds. But if I have 10 people to share that load with me, I might only feel the impact of about 10 to 15 pounds of that, because that weight is evenly distributed amongst each one of us that's trying to carry that load. So don't carry the load yourself. Reach out. Don't be shy. Don't be scared. Don't be prideful. Reach out to us as a community and let us help share that burden with you. With that note, before I move on, this actually wasn't in my notes, but that does lend itself to the fact that Jesus said, "Here, take my yoke, it is light." Basically telling us to give him our load and we take his. It doesn't just stop in the physical realm. Jesus said, "Give it to me, I got it." You know, he is the ultimate heavyweight of the world, heavyweight champion. He can carry it all on his shoulders. He did so on the cross. So remember that. I want you to think back, I told you I'd get back to Moses. He was holding his hands, that staff, high. And I don't know about you, have you ever even just raised your hands for a while? After a while, your shoulders hurt, your arms tired. Well, Moses is no different. He's a man. So while he was raising that staff, verse 12 of chapter 17 tells us his hands were heavy. They took a stone and they put it under him. And he sat thereon. So he sat down on that stone, took a load off his legs. Aaron and Hur, they stayed his hands up. So they helped prop his hands upward to the sky to keep the staff raised. They knew the importance of that staff being raised. And his hands were steady until the going down of the sun. So we can't always do it ourselves. Not even the great Moses could do it himself. He needed help. He had Aaron and Hur lifted his hands up, held them up there for him so that we could have victory. I think it's very funny or ironic that Moses is standing to the sky. It wasn't his legs and his feet that needed to be lifted up. He was able to sit down on that stone. And if you think about it, if you and I are standing, we got three of us standing in a group, and I'm the one holding the staff, my hands are going to be high. Well, your hands would be raised high too, right? To be able to hold mine up. But they put a stone underneath him so that he could sit down. And that brought his arms down to a point where I don't have to raise my hands up to keep his up. Interesting note there. It was the point of the hands needing to be raised that was the purpose. And sometimes we have to reposition ourselves in the middle of a conflict to receive the help that we need. And in doing so, it might require some posture to be changed. Maybe inside through our behavior, maybe our physical posture. But somehow, some way, our posture may have to change in order to receive the help that is being offered to us. Just something to think about there. Number 3, we want to change our perspective by acknowledging the character of God. Give you an image. If you look up at the sun, we know in our minds that it is a huge star. But if I were to sit here from Earth and I look at the sun and I take a quarter and I hold it up, I create an eclipse of the sun with that quarter, at least in my vision. So the perspective of the sun has changed, right? The quarter isn't as big as the sun, and the sun's not as small as the quarter. But from the perspective of what I'm looking at, they are pretty equal in size. So let's talk about a perspective story. So Saul and the Israelites were standing on a hilltop, and you had the Philistine army on the other hilltop, and they're staring each other down, and they're ready to go to war. So the Philistine army says, we're going to choose our champion. His name is Goliath, and he's going to come and take on your representative. So the Israelite army is looking around. They're looking for volunteers, the right candidate to go up against Goliath, this beast of a man. And there's not one that could be identified. Not one they felt comfortable with. David's brothers were even, he had 3 brothers there. They were even amongst the crowd. They were full-grown men. They were no grown man could they find, not even his brothers. Well, David's bringing supplies in, and while he's there, they have this conversation, and David's like, I'll go do it. Now, what made David feel like he could go do it? Because let me paint you a picture of the difference between Goliath and David. Goliath was a man that measured about 9'9" in height. He was such a strong man that he was covered in some heavy materials. All of his armor, body armor, weighed a massive amount. Hundreds of pounds of armor on this man he's carrying around like it's nothing. His spear had a head on it that weighed approximately 15 pounds. He had a shield that needed its own carrier in front of him. David, by comparison, was a young boy, a teenager who was used to being a shepherd, was not trained in the art of warfare, military tactics. He was a shepherd boy. Now he knew where his strength came from, as he referenced. He had fought off and killed a lion and a bear from attacking the herd, but he had not gone up against Goliath. David even they put the armor on David, and he couldn't even move in that armor really. So he told him, take it off. I'm just going to take I've got my pouch. I've got 5 smooth stones. I pulled out of the creek bed or the river around there. I've got my sling, and I'm going to battle. Now that just sounds absolutely crazy in our mindset, but that was David's. Why did he have that? Because while Saul and the Israelites are looking at this 9'9" man, looking at the size and stature and the strength, David looked down right about midway down Goliath and recognized this man's not circumcised. What does that matter? This man not being circumcised meant that he was not under the protection of God, the authority of God. Whereas David knew that the circumcision was a sign of the covenant made between God and man that had been long established. So David went into battle knowing it wasn't just him. You got your God, I got my God, and my God's about to whoop the fire out of your God and you. And David said, let's get it. And so that's what happened. So we have to change our perspective. His perspective was a spiritual one. He wasn't looking at the physical nature and tied up by that. He was looking at the spiritual covenant between him and God and Goliath and God. He had the covenant, David. Goliath did not, and David knew just off that fact he would be victorious. And knowing that goes to number 4. David knew that it wasn't going to be through his own might. It was going to be through God's power that this battle would be won, that Goliath would be slayed, and that's exactly what happened. In 1 Samuel chapter 17, verse 46, David says, this day the Lord, Jehovah Sabaoth, will hand you over to me. This little young boy's looking over, young teenage males looking, I think like Michael J. Fox-ish kind of size, back when he was kind of doing the Back to the Future days or something like that. I'm kind of thinking small in stature in my mind. That's just what I picture. You may picture something different. But the point is, this young man's looking at someone, and guys, I don't know if you know basketball, but I want to try to put 9'9" in perspective. I've watched Shaq his entire career. Shaquille O'Neal play basketball. Shaq, and even in his large stature right now, is a mammoth of a man. If I stood next to him, I'd look like a dwarf, and I'm 6 foot tall. Shaq is about 7'2", got to be over 300 and some odd pounds. and he just moved people on a basketball court. You would not stand in his way. Goliath is 2 feet 7 inches taller than Shaq. Matter of fact, we can put it in another light. Shaq stands under a goal, he raises his hand, he probably could barely touch the net or touch the rim. Goliath is almost hitting his head on the rim, standing flat foot with nothing on, if that gives you kind of a perspective. So if you really want to know about how high Goliath was, how tall he was, go stand under a basketball, look up, and then basically he was the height of the goal from the ground. But this young boy goes out, and that is not fazing him at all. He said, "You're going to be delivered today." And then the next point I want to point out in this section is there's still, even though the battle was given to God, there's still an element that we have to do. David still had to throw the stone. He had to take the slingshot, and he had to attack Goliath. Now God would divinely direct those right to the point that it would kill Goliath, and he was slayed. And we must trust God for our victory, and that's what David did. In verse 47 of that same chapter, 1 Samuel 17, David claimed, "For the battle is the Lord's, and he will hand you over to us." He not only was he confident that Goliath would be delivered, he was telling the Philistine army that you will be delivered as well. It's a lot of confidence coming out of a small package, but it can be delivered that way because he knew the package, the size of the power that God brought with him, an infinite power supply. You see, when you realize the God that we serve, and you connect with that energy source, that spiritual power that he is, the spiritual love that he brings to you, you'll not only understand the power that he has, that is greater than anything we could ever deal with in our lives, but the love he has for you is why he brings that to the table. He just wants you to love him back and have that communion with him each and every day. I hope you are able to see a picture of a God that is like no other. It's not just going down and calling on a Greek god or whatever the pagan gods were of the Egyptian and Greek days. We serve a God that is a living God, that is a loving God, and that is an all-powerful God. There's a lot to the God we serve, and I hope and pray that you continue to dig and dig and dig to understand the magnitude of who he is. Not only as an individual God, but as the magnitude of the love that he brings, the care that he has for you. If you've not seen that or not felt that in your life, I want to give you the opportunity right now to experience that, to come to the table and connect with him, to connect with Jehovah, to connect with Adonai, to make him Adonai of your life, to raise him high as your banner, as Jehovah Nissi, to recognize him as Jehovah Saba in the battles that you may be facing right now. Maybe you're in the battle of an addiction. Maybe your marriage is being attacked immensely right now. Maybe you're a family member of someone who's in a battle. Maybe they're in prison right now, and you're trying to encourage them. They're in a battle. Talk to them about who this God is that can help them through it. He is an amazing God that will do that. Call upon the Lord. That's all we have to do, and he will lift you up. I don't want you to get off of this feed today without having that relationship established. So I want to pray for you right now. If you've not taken that step, or maybe you have in the past and you've kind of floated away a little bit, because maybe you were like me when we started this series. I told you I knew of God. I didn't even realize I didn't really know him. I was living in denial, or I was confused. And so if you don't know him, maybe you came to him a long time ago, but you still don't know him. Maybe you've been keeping him away as if he's just Elohim. Maybe you haven't really gotten to know him as Jehovah, the self-revealing God. Guys, it is a game changer when you have that relationship with him. So let me pray for you right now and in that relationship, because I really pray that that gets established. God, I just come to you right now, humble, not just for all the things you've done in my life, but all the things that you're doing in this ministry, that you're going before as our Jehovah Nissi, our banner. But Father, there's people here on this feed that may not know you, and so they're outside of that. They don't know what it's like to have a God fighting their battles for them. They don't know what it's like to understand that they don't have to have the pressure and the weight of all control of all situations in their lives, because that brings about an unhealthy stress and anxiety that feels like a never-ending weight we just can't get off of our shoulders. But when we put ourselves in the proper positioning of the order that you created everything in, it brings a peace. It brings a lot of weight off of our shoulders to where we can just focus on you, because you are the one in full control of all things. You are the one that created us. You created all the situations that we need to be encountering. You have the battle plan, the victory plan already in place. And therefore, it just makes it easier if we go to you, and makes it better because you've got control of all of it. If someone doesn't know you and they haven't come into that relationship with you, open their hearts right now and touch their heart in a way that is beyond the shadow of a doubt. They know that it is you. If they know of you, I ask that the O and the F be removed right now so that they can get to know you. Give them the strength and the remembrance each and every day to open the Word and to study, to read the love letter that you wrote them through the Bible, to pray constantly so that they have that open dialogue with you, to put people in their lives that are godly individuals that will look out for them and share the love that you have, that you want them to feel. Change lives today. Make our lives stronger and better, Lord. Show us the way to victory in a situation if we're right now mired in a battle that just looks completely defeated, because you have that victory path. And help us just to continue to grow in our walk each and every day with you. I ask this in Jesus' name. Amen. Your life doesn't have to be the same that it's been. It could change today. It's a choice you have to make. Until next week, I love you. Have a great week. And we'll dig some more next week into a couple more names of God. Have a great one. I'll see you next week. Take care. I want to thank you for being here today with us, joining us today. And it has been our honor, our privilege to serve you and to host you today. If you want more information about Crossroads of Hope, you can click on the QR code located right here. That'll take you to a quick reference guide that'll have all the links to our website, our social media, even to a Spotify playlist that is a collection of music that we listen to in our own lives that speaks to us. Every month we add to that playlist, and it just keeps growing. If you need to go to a traditional website path, you can go to crossroadsofhope.church, not .com, .church. There you'll find everything you want to know about who we are, why we exist, and who we serve. You'll also find a Give tab. On that Give tab, you can find all the ways that you can contribute financially to our ministry to help us grow and get the word out to more and more people. One of the biggest challenges is connecting with individuals, and it takes financial support to be able to find methods to mail out letters, to mail out cards, to be able to go to conferences and connect with leaders of these grassroots organizations that are putting the word out. Through those channels, we've been able to connect with more and more people over the past year. It's your support that allows those things to happen. So thank you for that. You'll also find our social media links, all of our handles there, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and Reddit. So keep up with us throughout the week. And before I leave, I just want to speak to those of you who may be struggling today. Or maybe you struggle throughout the week. If you find yourself struggling, It's those social media links that are critical to have in your back pocket. We are always available for you. We always have notifications going off throughout the week that if you need us, if we can serve you during the week, not only do you have our email addresses off the website, but you have our social media links to direct message, and our social media coordinator will take your information and get you in touch with us. We want to make sure that you live a safe, productive life throughout the week. We want you to understand that your life matters. You have value, and we love you. Each and every one of you that watches this feed, we support you, we love you. We just want to serve you. So with that, guys, have a blessed week. It is my privilege to be a part of this community. Thank you very much. See you again next Sunday.